Hello. Is this on? Can you hear me on this thing? Shout out to my special topics students here today. All right, guys. So this is very exciting. Welcome to Your Voice, Your Vote. You all know me. I'm Laura Flanagan. If you don't, my pronouns are she, her. And I teach here at the School of Dramatic Arts. And I am so excited that we're finally doing this. I'm also on the board of the Institute for Theater and Social Change, who is hosting this event. Shout it out for the Institute of Theater and Social Change. We are, I know why you're here, and they will come out in just a minute, okay? But before they do, I just want to tell you our goals for this event. We have many goals, but first and foremost, our goal is that you all get all the info that you want and need about registration, how you can vote. You get excited about the possibility of your vote. You maybe even get inspired to help other people to get out and vote. But very important, right now, everyone take out your phone-a-majiggies and turn them off. We are not posting this event. We have photographers here to take pictures. You'll be able to find those pictures. You can upload them to your Instagram. But we're asking that you guys don't do that here, okay? This event will not be sponsored by Mark Zuckerberg, okay? Let's not post here, okay? So I don't know, how many people here are from School of Dramatic Arts? Is everybody? Okay, good. How many people are not here from School of Dramatic Arts? Bless you, love you. Yes? This is awesome. So one of the questions that was asked me is, why is the School of Dramatic Arts hosting this event, right? What do we in dramatic arts have to do with voting? And I just want to take a second to explain before we bring out the main event. As you know, we here at School of Dramatic Arts, we are involved in storytelling. We are storytellers. And we embody these stories, we design these stories, we light these stories, we stage manage these stories, and we step into these stories and we take action. And one of the bedrocks of what we teach here at the school is that all stories are dependent upon someone doing something. If a character doesn't take action, the story doesn't move forward. If the lighting designer doesn't turn on the lights don't go on. So taking action is part of what we teach, it's part of what we model, and it's part of what we believe. The other thing about stories is that we are telling them on this stage and on film, but we're also living them. And all of us here in this room right now have a collective story. We all have different lenses, but we share this one story, which is the story of America, yes? The story of the United States of America. We're all part of making that story. Our voice makes that story. And one of the most, and we have Phillipa coming out here, right? From the famed, her famed moment in Hamilton, what's the song from Hamilton about your story? Come on, my theater students. Give that man a mic, yes! Woo! Okay, so being part of that story, this story of America, your own voice, shaping it in your own way, a huge part of that is your vote. So that's part of what we are doing here. So at the end of this event, we will have a QR code up here that has all the information you need to know about your registration or checking your registration, and I'll come back to that at the end. But now I would like to introduce our panel and our moderator, Mindy Romero from the Center for Inclusive Democracy. This is the woman who knows everything and knows all the answers to all the questions that you have about your vote. So come on out, Mindy Romero. Woo! Mindy drove all the way from Sacramento. Did you know that USC had a branch in Sacramento? I did not know this. She drove all the way to be here for this event and for you guys today. Great. And Mindy, would you like to take it away and introduce our panelists? You have a mic right there if you want to pick it up. Or we can just use our voices, yes?
Well, it's a theater, so I should be able to project in a theater, right?
Yes, you can.
Except I have no experience projecting.
No, you're great.
Hi, everybody. Is this on? There we go. Well, thank you very much for having me. This is such a fun event. I am so excited to be here. I hope you all are as well. And, you know, at the end of the day, we hope that this is enriching for you, as you've just heard, but also that you take forward what you learn, your thoughts, your experiences, right, and share it with your peers, your friends, your family. So it's going to be a good day. I'm going to handle introductions. So first, I want to introduce our culture change strategist and USC graduate, Kevin Ratowski. My apologies for butchering your name there a bit. And next, Executive Director of the Hometown Project, Erin, Frederick. Great, thank you. Our next panelist is deeply involved in his hometown of Flint, Michigan, supporting voter engagement programs as well as family advocacy programs to improve infant and maternal health in the community. Actor, comedian, and writer known for his comedic roles in numerous television programs, including quirky science teacher, Mr. Morton, on Abbott Elementary. Welcome, Jerry Minor. Next, we have a multi-talented performer on stage and screen. This award-winning actor has been politically active throughout his career, using his roles as vehicles for political conversation and social change. Recent roles include David E. Kelley's The Calling and Stephen Sondheim's Here We Are. Let's hear it for Steve Pasquale. Woohoo. Okay, finally, you know her as a Tony-nominated actress, the original Eliza in Hamilton on Broadway. She's also starring in the new hit show that just premiered just last week, Dr. Odyssey. Inspiring activists who co-founded the Eliza Project to give young people the opportunity to use the arts as a means of civic and political expression, as an outlet of personal experience, and to uplift the creative spirit. Please welcome Phillipa Sue. I know there's a...
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Say hello, yeah. All right, let's jump in, shall we? Okay. So before we begin our conversation, I'd like to get a sense of all of you here in the room, what your own level and interest has been in political and civic participation. So raise your hand for me if you have ever voted. This is a safe space. We want to just get a sense. Great, thanks.
All right.
Great. Raise your hand if you are currently registered to vote.
Oh my gosh, you guys,
Wow.
that's amazing.
Wow, okay. Raise your hand if you are confused or maybe a little unsure to some degree about how you can vote on campus. Okay, great, thank you. Yeah. And now raise your hand if you're unsure if you want to vote. Again, safe space. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I'd like to give our panelists, our esteemed panelists here, a sense of where everybody's from. So I know a lot of you are from California, but if you raise your hand and just let us know if you reside, your home, your family is from outside of the state.
Any non-Californians? Wow,
Non-Californians. Wow, that's a lot. Okay, so I got to get a sense now. Where are y'all from?
look at that. Shout it out.
Oh, okay.
Michigan?
Woo! Okay,
Chicago.
No New Yorkers?
Proud.
Yeah? Are you from Libertyville? Oh my God, me too!
Honey, ride home, ride
I
home.
love this.
Okay, this is really fitting. They're really proud of their hometowns, and we're talking about the hometown project, right?
Heck yeah.
Any
Awesome.
Pennsylvanians out there? Any Pennsylvanians out there? Where are you from? Harrisburg, me too. Bishop McDevitt High School. Oh. Small world.
High school rivalries?
Yeah, Bishop McDevitt, Cumberland, they're better than us, frankly. But
How funny. Okay, thank you all. All right. So, one of the goals of this afternoon's conversation is to inspire students, hopefully all of you, to find their own voice and to get involved with elections and voting. I want to pose this question to our panelists. So, maybe we'll go down and we'll start with you, Phillipa. What inspired you to use your creative voice to get involved with voter advocacy specifically?
Oh gosh. Well, I feel like growing up, politics was something that I was aware of but never really active in. And truly it wasn't until I got to New York and got to school, I was the same age that you guys are now, and meeting people coming from different parts of the world with different experiences other than my own. And my world just got suddenly bigger. I just started thinking about how other people live and what they're doing and how they live their lives. And I think a large part of that was the fact that I went to a theater program where my job was to learn how to empathize with people. So I think that's part of it. And then being in New York, experiencing different people, different cultures. And once I graduated, doing a show like Hamilton, where suddenly I was so young, but so, quite frankly, thrust into the world and needing to be cognizant of who I am as a citizen in this world, as well as who I am as an artist. So I felt like I was sort of, thrust into it in a way that I think was surprising and shocking, but also I felt ready and responsible for rising to the occasion. I had the great gift of being in something that I thought spoke to people, not only was entertaining and fun and deep and moving, but it was politically active in itself as a piece of art. So I felt like, okay, this is the beginning of my journey. And maybe I wasn't ready for it. Maybe I felt like I was new and I didn't know enough, but I was ready. I knew enough to be there and to be in that situation, and I was excited to take it on. And I think, seeing you guys all out here in the place that you are, there's just so much potential for opening your minds and your hearts to ideas that you might not be familiar with. And I think it can feel sometimes like you don't know enough, or you're not equipped to be in a position to be making really adult decisions about what you think and who you want to be in this world. But you're ready. You are. Even if you don't feel ready, you're here and you made it. Anyway, that's a long way of just saying, being in a show like Hamilton led me to wanting to be interested and active in politics.
Thank you.
I'll be really quick with my answer. I grew up in a conservative Republican household in small town central Pennsylvania, right outside Harrisburg in Hershey, PA. And when I became an actor and a theater maker and an artist, I found myself having conversations with tons of people who challenged my belief system and really affected the way that I feel about the world. And I very quickly, as a young adult, felt like I started to lean significantly left of center. And so for me, it was right at that age, that college age of like 18, 19, 20, when I was having conversations with people who grew up differently than me, or looked different than me, or lived differently than me, that opened my mind to the idea of changing my set of ideology that I had been sort of a little bit indoctrinated into as a young person. So 18, 19, 20, college age, your age. Hey!
My background is a little bit different from a lot of people. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness who expressly do not vote. It is one of their tenets. Even though if you did grow up a Jehovah's Witness, I will tell you that I have looked extensively into this, into their rules. And so they do express that they don't vote, but there's nothing in their actual rules. So if you did grow up that way and you are scared of voting, if you go vote, they will do nothing to you. There are many things that you will get punished for in that organization, but that is the one thing that you will not get punished for. So you are not supposed to vote, but there is no penalty for voting. So you can do it if you want to. And if you do it and you don't tell anybody, then obviously you'll be okay. But being that way, I did not grow up politically active. Jehovah's Witnesses are expressly what they call, well, they say they're neutral, but they do have opinions on things. When I was no longer a Jehovah's Witness, when I got out of high school and went to college, I started to become more politically active. It wasn't something that I was naturally comfortable with after growing up being quote-unquote neutral. But what got me more into being politically active was actually local things. I think we tend to dismiss local elections, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that those things affect your quality of life more than a lot of our bigger elections. And our local elections go along with our bigger elections. So that is something that I get involved in just in my own neighborhood, and then at a certain point, I ran for neighborhood council, and it really taught me a lot about the people that are doing this. And not all of them were often given the impression that anybody that enters politics is just doing it for themselves, or they have some kind of ulterior motive. And I met so many people who just had really honest motives across the political spectrum of just getting things done. And that's what I want to do. We have to get these things done. We live in a democracy, no matter what people say, no matter people say, oh, it's a republic. We still have to vote. We're still responsible for these things. Still things have to get done, no matter what political position that you take. So that was what got me into it, and I've continued.
Well, thank you for having me. Quite frankly, I don't know how I ended up on this stage next to these amazing panelists. I'm a graduate from the School of Theater, so a lot of these folks are my heroes, my mentors. I am the son of two public interest lawyers. One is a labor union lawyer, one is a family law immigration lawyer. So I grew up in this household with these kind of progressive values, knocking on doors, doing the census, getting out the vote when I was like 7, But ever since I was 4, I'd been dancing and singing and taking choir lessons and singing in the church. And then, so when it was time to go to college, I wasn't ready to choose. I'm so passionate about politics. I'm so passionate about community engagement, but I love theater. I love music. And so I decided to double major at USC. Still thinking, I don't know which one to choose yet. I don't know if I'm gonna go and commit my life to public service, or if I'm gonna go and try to be on Broadway in New York, or do what I really love to do. And it was coming to USC and double majoring and meeting so many amazing, really professors, taking some amazing classes, when I started to realize maybe I could do both, and there were folks at the School of Theater at the time, and who are still here, who encouraged me to keep exploring both avenues. And then, long story short, I'm sure we'll talk about it more throughout this panel, I ended up smack dab in the middle of the fight for marriage equality, in 2013, through 2015. And there were so many artists who were involved in this policy fight. It was, a policy fight, but there were so many actors, musicians, and folks that we started to utilize as part of this storytelling initiative. And that's when I started to realize there is so much power in storytelling. And we need storytellers and we need creatives, because these people are future architects. They're the ones who are designing and creating and thinking of a world that we just don't know is possible right now, and that's their job. And so I've been working in that field now for about 10 years, realizing the power of music, theater, film, TV, activism, slam poetry, whatever. I think storytelling is the crux of the thing, and the crux of both of my passions. And so it was that kind of journey that made me realize that's how I got so involved, and that's how I become so passionate in this kind of like niche world that I work in. Realizing that I can still do my art, still be an artist, still be a storyteller, and still, feed that passion of public engagement, political, engagement that I do today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm the head of the Hometown Project, which is where a lot of these folks are help in using their voice to get out the word around voting and elections. And yeah, I was actually it's so amazing that like everyone said it was when I was in college around your age where I started to realize, wow, yeah, I grew up in a very Catholic family. I went to college. All of a sudden, everyone around me was very different from the sort of bubble that I grew up in. And then I started questioning all the things that I learned about when I was growing up. And then it wasn't until my senior year in college I saw a panel not so different than this, actually, with a playwright named Moises Kaufman, who wrote a play called The Laramie Project. And I thought it was a beautiful play and story that needed to be told. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that play, but it was the idea of, I said to Moises, all of you, all of us in this audience, we already care about what you're saying. How do we get the people to really hear the message? And he said, you make it about them. The story, you need to tell these stories, go into these communities, and that's what they did with the Laramie Project. And so you're not preaching to the choir, right? You're telling stories to communities that need to hear it. And that, to me, was the moment where I said, that's the type of work I want to do. I want to do theater for social change, films in that genre, and then in that realm, and then ultimately started an organization that sort of brought together the two worlds of social change, social action and advocacy, and using artists to elevate that message.
Can I brag about Erin's organization for a second? The Hometown Project, you guys heard of this, the Hometown Project? It's fantastic. So a lot of you are storytellers, right? Theater kids, et cetera. So if you end up in a life of storytelling, you're most likely gonna end up in New York City or Los Angeles. Those are the two places where you can really make a life for yourself as a storyteller. Maybe Chicago, et cetera. And what Erin has come up with is this spectacular idea, because not all of us are from those places. I'm from Pennsylvania, Phillipa's from Chicago, Michigan.
LA.
Oh, LA. Anyway, this organization encourages visible artists, musicians, leaders to get involved in their hometown to help elections in their hometown where they might feel passionate. So for example, like I would make videos to try to help my local central Pennsylvania representative who I agree with on a policy level get elected there. So it's not always a conversation about big giant federal elections. So really cool, check it out, the Hometown Project. And it's putting its finger on the scale, it's making a difference. That's all.
Okay, thank you all. Next question. So you all come to us today as well-known artists, and I'll say everyone here on this panel, who have decided to volunteer their time with the Hometown Project as hometown energizers, and use your influence to reach voters in your hometowns. What led each of you, and some of you already talked about it a little bit, but it's a dedicated question on this now. So what led each of you to get involved with the Hometown Project, and what makes that work unique, do you think? Now let whoever wants to jump in first, yeah.
I got involved through some of the Michigan Democrats. My wife was writing for them, but really why I wanted to get involved, I mean, I always felt like I was, previous to getting involved in the Hometown Project, I was pretty active politically, and especially in my writing, for better or for worse. I've gotten fired off jobs, and I've gotten jobs, but I always felt like I put my opinions, I put my politics in my writing, in my work, and this was something that was like another type of work. This isn't just about getting my opinion out there. This is about getting you active, getting other people active, which I thought, man, that's probably more important than just my opinion, So that's why I thought it was important to get in this. We ended up flipping the house in Michigan, and I was really proud of that, of being able to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll piggyback onto that. this notion that, oh my God, I completely forgot what I was going to say. How about that?
Well, I certainly think that for myself, oh gosh, it must have been right before the pandemic when we met. But certainly my engagement with the Hometown Project went up during the pandemic because as a theater maker, I could not make theater. And it was a large part of how I was able to do my activism. I feel very lucky that the projects that I've gotten to work on speak to the things that I want to change and the change that I want to see in the world. So that was wrapped up in my art. And when I wasn't able to do that in my art because the art wasn't happening, the Hometown Project was such a wonderful way to feel connected to a larger community. And I think what's even more importantly, and actually just so wonderful in a way that feels like I could actually give back to the community that raised me, I got to engage with a couple of candidates that were trying to get elected in the area that I grew up in. And I felt like it was my duty at that time as a citizen to participate in that. And what a wonderful way to learn about new candidates, learn about what's actually happening in the place that I grew up and how the people feel there and the need that is there. And to get to engage and talk with some people that might have felt like, oh, well, I didn't know anything about this candidate. Can you tell me more about her? Or even my best friend runs a local art center, the Adler Art Center, which maybe you've heard of. She was saying that she had been talking with Mary Edley Allen, who ended up being elected, about the arts and trying to get her support and advocacy. And so it really sort of made me realize that it's much smaller than you think. I think with these federal elections, it can feel very daunting and so big. And how important is my voice in this large election? Like, what does it really matter? Well, that's a great, interesting perspective to have, but it really does matter when it comes to local elections.
These local elections are decided by sometimes hundreds of votes, sometimes dozens of votes,
Sometimes
a
one or
handful
two.
of votes.
And really, if you think about it, if you can imagine yourself as a young person in that community, not able to vote, but I'm just imagining, like, if I could have an older version of myself looking out for me, what would I want her to say? And so I get the opportunity through the Hometown Project to engage with all the young people that grew up in my town, that I see myself in, that were in a place that I was in, and weren't able to vote. I'm able to kind of serve my community in that way through a platform, which I feel so privileged to have. So I think just in terms of the question, our involvement with Hometown, I think it's a really great way to start if you feel like you don't know where to begin with your political life and your activism. Just start local. And that actually just starts with asking questions, not finding answers.
Also, in this moment, this is my belief, and I believe anyone who's really paying attention, it's clearly observable. We are in a moment in this country where apoliticalness, feeling like a person is not political, is not really going to work going forward. We are in a moment where if we don't all get involved in a big level, the country's going to take a turn for the worse for most of us. And I feel like the quickest way to put your finger on the scale is to get involved locally. And so just another sort of shout out to local politics.
If I can add, I'm not an artist representative for Hometown, but I work with Peter, the founder, and just this idea of hyper-local is so important and so powerful. I sit on my neighborhood council. I'm an elected representative of my neighborhood. I won by 5 votes.
I lost by 2.
You lost by 2? Yeah? That's how it goes. And to Steve's point, we're at a choice point. I mean, what this election is a choice point. And I think there can be very daunting and scary narratives that we're hearing about one side or the other. But there's also a world where we can infuse joy into this and possibility, and I think that happens on a local level too. The most rewarding, experiences I have in public service are my neighborhood council when we have budget and we get to decide what the park is going to look like down my street. And that's going to affect me every day. And like, how fun is that? That I get to design the playground where I'm going to walk my dog, and the community are going to bring out their kids, and we also get to decide who gets an alcohol license in our neighborhood, so that we can bring in more restaurants and more cafes, and we infuse budget into our neighborhood. We're putting up murals. We've just started a drum circle in our neighborhood, with funds that we control, and that's kind of the most exciting piece of this local question, because that's going to affect me every single day. Every day that I take my dog out on a walk, and every day, every Friday when I want to go walk around my neighborhood. And so it's all a choice. You can decide to look at it from that perspective, which I have the privilege of being able to do, being on this neighborhood council. And there's truly some very serious narratives too that we need to confront in this election as well.
And also the idea that sometimes, we all know that we're going to vote it's a presidential election, right? So we all know that there are two candidates at the top of ticket, but there's tons of candidates on that ballot. And sometimes it's a dizzying array of candidates. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they stand for. How are they going to affect me? I don't even know their names, so let alone what they do in their job. And so sometimes I think it's like 35% of people just abandon the rest of the ballot after the first checkbox, or circle, or depending on what state you live. And so that's the idea of the Hometown Project, is to use well-known people, trusted messengers, people that you're familiar with, that you might associate with their values or your favorite TV show or whatever. They're not a political face that you're like, ugh, I don't do politics. I can't. It's too much. So it's like we want to be able to reach you where you are, to say, these are people that are making decisions that actually affect your lives, it's not all about what happens in DC. Yes, DC does matter. A lot of women lost their rights from decisions that were made in DC. They were pushed to the states. And now the states are deciding, and that's why you have to vote for your state senator, your state representative, your state Supreme Court. The court systems in states are more important than ever. And I would argue that very few of us in this room know who our state, who's on the ballot for the courts. So that's all to say that we put together well-known people who are from your communities to be able to tell you, here's who's running, here's what's at stake, and you should engage in these local elections too. So.
And I just want to, is my mic on? Is it on? Yeah, it's on. I just want to say why we're doing this at USC, because you guys are unique, because some of you from here. How many people are from Orange County? Okay. So there's a lot of really important elections in Orange County, even if you're, so hopefully part of what you're hearing isn't just like, yeah, I know, I'm registered already, why am I hearing this? Because we want you to go and call the people in your hometown. We want you to make sure that they're gonna get out and vote, that your aunt has a way to get to the polls, that someone's gonna drive your grandma to vote, that your friends are registered, that you if you get inspired, you too can be a hometown energizer for your own community, and that might be something exciting for you. So that's part of, that was my thought in partnering with the Hometown Project here at USC, was to, yes, get you registered, but also get you excited that like, oh, as someone, as a new voice, as an artist, as someone who's excited about this, I can reach out to my community. I can get them involved as well. So
you guys are probably the climate kids, right? You guys been hearing about climate since you were little kids, right? So this country is going to come down to who's in the House of Representatives or not. It's not just who's in the White House, right? And so that the number of people in the House of Representatives comes right through California, as it does all of your other hometowns. So right, there's one group of people that want to do something about climate change, and there's another that don't. So it's like really important that we gain traction and momentum in the House of Representatives, and that could come down to these really your hometown elections for those representatives. So as fellow climate warriors, that on that issue alone, it's an important moment.
I'll tell you how this stuff can like affect your life. So like during the 2000 election, I was working at Saturday Night Live. Both Bush and Gore came to the show. Bush wanted to know who does him. Gore asked like really nice questions. Bush, the first thing he's like, oh, who does me? I want to meet the guy who does me. But at that night, you know, the election night was crazy. That morning, I'm just like, oh my God, I don't, what is going to happen? I just had this bad feeling, something bad is going to happen to the world. Cut to 2003, and I'm in LA now, and I'm working on another show, writing another show. And I'm writing sketches, and one of my prize sketches is going to go on the next night, and then they announce that we're about to invade Iraq. And my mind went back to 2000, and I'm like, see? My sketch could have got on. Anyway, this is a joke, I'm sorry. You really do want to think about how this can affect your life. You don't know my point is you don't know how it's going to affect you down the road. So we get to this point where we're going like, how did women lose the right to choice of their own body? How did that happen? Well, there's a bunch of different things that we can't just go like this one thing and make that happen. And so that's why we need to continue to be active, continue to look at these issues. I'm sorry, that was a bad joke.
No, it wasn't.
It's a hard way to get there.
You bring up a great point. 2008, I don't know, were you all born in 2008 yet? Or how old were you? Like two? Like two. Jeez, wild. Oh my gosh. Okay, 2008, I mean, was a great, for a lot of people. I think the country, the narrative is it was a hopeful year and some great things happened. Barack Obama was elected president of the United States in 2008. That's the same day that California voted to ban same-sex marriage in the state. It's the same exact date.
Can you believe we did that in this state?
In this state. And that, I don't know if you guys know this. We voted and we said no to gay marriage on the same night that Barack Obama was elected president of the United States.
By the way, don't think that might not be on the agenda for the future as well, right? If we don't get it right.
And that's like, as I'm gay, and I grew up gay Catholic, and so I grew up in a world where I never thought I was going to get married. It was just like wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't in the cards. One, being Catholic. Two, gay marriage wasn't legal. It is wild. I ended up working in that movement, and we won marriage equality. And it's a wild feeling. It's making me very emotional. It's wild that, you know, all of a sudden I have access to a right that, like, growing up as a kid, I never thought that this would be a thing, that I could never, and now it's like the one thing I want to find a partner, I want to have a family. And to your point, yes, it is very possible that can be taken away again. So it's a weird feeling when you grow up kind of knowing, oh, I don't have a right, I'm never going to do it, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait, it was my right all along, which is what the Supreme Court case actually said. It's not a new right. Nobody was giving a new right when marriage equality passed. They actually said, you've actually been denied your right to marry. You've been denied your right your entire life. And so that's what happened, you know, on the same day that Barack Obama was elected. And that's, you know, I think we have some very similar choice points now that people might not understand what it can impact for a generation.
I don't know if you remember, but that was a surprise for everyone, but it was one of those things of like, everybody forgot that was on the ballot because we had this big, giant election going on, this national election, and the first black president was going to be voted, and people just completely forgot. And I think a lot of people didn't vote, but there was also a contingent, especially in this state, who knew that people were forgetting that and who were pushing for that ban on the ballot, and people were, that was their election. They knew that Barack Obama was going to win in California, but for them, that was their election. So we just have to keep in mind that there's a lot of things on the ballot all up and down. We have to, you know, just...
And I also want to add to that, because that reminds me, and I don't want to go too far off topic and go to our next question, but it was also in the way that ballot initiative was worded. And so when I'm helping out with a yes on Prop 1 in New York right now, and it's like, what does that mean, you know? So if there's a proposition in California, California is one of the states that has the most ballot propositions. Again, it's a dizzying array. We don't know what they are. It's important to read and understand exactly what those are. Text your friends. Hey, do you know anything about these props? Get a text thread going, because the way they're worded can be misleading and cause exactly what happened that year, too.
Ballotpedia. It's a great guide. If you
It is,
you can
yeah.
you can look up any election. All you got to do is put in your area code, and you can find out all the elections that are in your area, everything, all the candidate statements,
Ballotpedia.
everything. So yeah, just look up Ballotpedia,
Yeah.
and you can get all the information that you want.
So I hate to stop you because this is a great conversation and an important topic. I'll just add something, by the way. Marriage equality is on the ballot again in California, if you didn't know, Proposition 3, which is all about removing the language that was in Prop 8 back in 2008. So even though the Supreme Court of the United States has said that we have marriage equality and it's your right, California's Constitution still has that language. So Prop 3 is on the ballot. Yes. All right. Let's move on. I'm going to ask you, speaking out as an artist in this charged political climate can be stressful, or at least something to navigate, right? Recently, Chappell Roan received online backlash from how she discussed her voting behavior. Everybody see that or hear about that? Right? She's talked about how that's impacted her. How do you see your role as an artist in the political sphere? When does it feel most comfortable to get involved, and when do you tread into places that might be out of your comfort zone? How do you find the right balance, or is it about balance?
I'll take this one. It is not difficult because right now in this moment, in this American landscape, we are looking at an inflection point where there is clear right and clear wrong. It's not about policy. It's not about conservative Republicans, about corruption and con artistry and lifelong criminal behavior versus rule of law, democracy in action, will of the people, maintaining our sense of a democracy is a very clear choice. So there's for me, there's never been a thing of like, well, how can do I feel awkward speaking out? No, it's screaming what it needs to be in this moment right now. So for me, it's never been a struggle, but I do struggle with other visible artists who seem to have a issue speaking out in this moment. This is not a normal moment. This is a moment where we really all hands have to be on deck to maintain the American experiment.
Thank you.
This is not necessarily the answer to that question, but it reminds me of something that was really valuable in terms of my mindset and how I thought about participating in democracy, which I've said before, but I'll just say it again for this room, that democracy is only activated by us. It only works if we all participate. And I like to think of democracy and how I participate in democracy like exercise or brushing my teeth. I can't brush my teeth once and say that I have great dental health, right? You have to do it every single day. I can't exercise for 20 minutes on a treadmill really, really hard and then be like, whew, I am fit. You have to keep going at it and really working towards this practice of democracy. And it's not something that's necessarily that you have to be an expert at. You don't have to be an expert at exercise in order just to do it. I mean, I think I don't think it's a coincidence that they use the phrase exercise your right to vote. So I think, in this landscape of feeling like really daunted by the world in general, that it's actually just as simple as going on Ballotpedia and doing a little research for yourself if you feel like, I don't know who my candidates are, or I don't know what's gonna be on my ballot. And that's the amazing thing about being an adult, is that it's not homework, it's not like you're gonna get a grade on it, it's just for yourself. It's for yourself. It's a way to take care of yourself, to take care of your mind and your body and your well-being. It's just like exercise or brushing your teeth. You just practice it, you just gotta do it, and the more you do it, the better you'll feel about it. And I'll also say that I think it's hard in this society, which is very much, loves the binary, to feel like, there's only one path and you wish that you could get directly there. And I like to think of democracy kind of like travel, that you can't take a machine that's gonna get you to the exact spot on the planet that you want to be in one go. You have to take a flight, which will maybe take you to a town near the place that you want to go to, and then maybe you have to take a bus to get to the other place that you want to get to, and then you have to walk 10 minutes to get to the parking lot from the bus stop, to get to the whatever, the point that you want to get to. So there's not a perfect candidate. I think people aren't perfect. But I think you have to remember that you need to take the vehicle and choose the flight or choose the train that will get you the closest to where you want to be.
Yeah,
But
like shared values, right? Like, let's get you involved for a moment in this conversation. Just show of hands. Don't tell us your political affiliation. Don't tell us where you're from. But like, I would imagine your generation cares about passing some common sense laws regarding guns. Show of hands, yes or no? Right? That's the vast majority of you and most of us in the country. We can't get that done, right? Because we don't have majorities in Congress. How many of you care about climate as an issue, as a major issue? The vast majority of you. That's us. That's the vast exhausted majority of Americans. We can't get enough done there because we need better majorities everywhere throughout. How many of you believe that Elon Musk should pay the same tax rate that your doctor friend who makes $300,000 a year should pay? You think he should have a different tax rate? Yeah, right? That's not so much vast majority, but certainly majority. Like, we agree on some. How many believe in a woman's right to her bodily autonomy? Just general hands. The vast majority. We agree on most major issues in a huge way. And the reason we can't make progress fast enough is because we aren't winning the majorities we need in Washington and locally. And that's a big fight because the system is a little bit rigged for minority rule right now. Like, North Dakota has 500,000 people and 2 senators. 500,000 people live on my block in Brooklyn, right? Like, it's not really representative of the people. So that's all stuff we have to work towards changing, but it's about our shared values at least seem to be pretty evident in terms of the vast majority of people. So think about that when you're thinking locally. Who might share your values just generally?
As far as being like, you know, you can. I've had experience of like, hey, my political opinion or what I'm trying to. I've felt the brunt of, you know, it doesn't always go well. Let's just say that. But I've been in the forefront of that. You know, I worked for Michael Moore. I was writing for Saturday Night Live. You know, a lot of my stuff was political, so I go on that. I walk that tightrope, you know, and I accept that. But growing up the way that I did, and I'm going to talk religious for a moment. What we were taught was, you don't vote because we're waiting for God. God's laws, God's system is much better than man's. And a lot of people think this, and you know, whether you think it or not, that to them makes sense. If you're a religious person, you're waiting on God. You're waiting on Jesus. They're the person, or whatever religion you are. You're waiting for that higher power to take care of whatever problems there are in the world. And so for them, voting was a way of saying, I don't believe that God is going to take care of these problems. But then at a certain point in my life, I thought, well, what about, like, I mean, yeah, voting for president, but what about, like, my job? What about, like, the union boss? You know, like, all these things that we vote for that I wasn't allowed to vote for. What about, like, student government? And thinking about that was like, oh, yeah, I am thinking about how this affects my life, and I'm voting for things that affect my life. And there's things I don't see this in the Bible. I don't see, you know, I don't see God talking about, like, oh, we need a street light there, you know. And then I took it to a further degree. I'm like, well, how do the leaders of my religion, how do they decide on things? And then I found out they voted. I'm like, well, shit, no, I'm voting then. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. They vote. That's how you decide on how things happen. It's how we decide as a group how things happen. So I know that there's a lot of this, you know, currently, it's always been, but you know, the telling you that it doesn't matter, your vote doesn't matter, that attitude, the apathy that goes with voting. Yeah, after growing up and not having that privilege and going like, man, I wish I could, like, have some say into, like, who is, like, the person that decides when I go on break at my job, you know, made me realize, like, yeah, I do have agency, and this agency is my ability to vote, and that affects me. And I know it's a lot of us that vote, but, like, that matters.
350 million people live in this country. Let's say 70 million are underage, can't vote. That leaves what? 280. Only 130 million people voted in the last federal election. That's 120 million people sitting on the sidelines. If 1% of that 120 million participated, we could make progress in all of those things that we just talked about before, where you put your hands up. 1%.
You ever see those countries when they just like, when they first get the right to vote, you know, and they have to like, you know, get dye on their finger, and everybody has dye on their finger. Like those people do not question their right to vote. When they get the chance, they do it. Here, we take it for granted because we've had it forever. So.
When the Ukrainian citizens voted on whether or not they wanted their own sovereignty, 92% of the public voted and voted for their sovereignty. 8% voted against it, right? We've got an apathy issue in this country. We can fix it. We just need young people to get fired up about it.
And it's true, Stephen, when I see those numbers at our organization, we work with a lot of organizations in different states, and oftentimes we'll lean on the organization to show us the numbers. And this year we did our own study, and we're looking at these, and I have to tell you, you're all in the age group where my jaw dropped. I'm like, I've always heard, young people don't show up. These percentages were like, are you kidding me? 7%, and then you've got certain, groups of people that are showing up at 90%, 50%. You're like, okay, good, that's 50%. Most of the age groups that we're looking at, and I'm looking at some of our team that's in the audience, but like 18 to 24 and even like 24 to 33 or something, those groups are the two lowest voting age block groups in the country. State to state, it's consistent. And when Stephen just said these two things that you care about, you literally have the power to change them. You've got to tell your friends, look, these are the two things. You have so much power as a voting bloc. And so for me at the Hometown Project, that's what we're trying to do, is like get people in front of you that are going to be that thing. Oh, I know them, maybe from this or that. But really, I would love to know, like, what is it going to take? What do you think it would take for people that you know that don't show up? What is it that, is it a lack of information, lack of interest in the candidates? I want to be able to find out, because so often you have, I would argue to say, yes, all of us up on stage are older than you. I can't see into your brain. I have a 15-year-old, I can ask her a lot, but like, is there anything, and if it's okay if I ask this question, but like, is there anything, does anyone feel like they can share, like, what's the missing piece? What is it that would get you to, yeah.
I think that young people are really tired of having to choose from two seemingly evil people, especially like when it's so hard to, like becoming a presidential candidate is a long, long process, and there being two people to choose from, like in practicality, you can't choose another, like it's just not gonna happen. It's not how our system is designed. It becomes exhausting to watch and devastating to do.
It
So you would be
does,
like
but
a future-
there's going to be about 24 candidates on your ballot. That's what I want to say. Like, it's not just two.
And
There's
also,
not-
to even
right.
dig down further, like what you're saying has got a lot of value, which is like maybe someday what we want is more than two parties, right? Like let's say there are 5 parties. Wouldn't that be great? But we can't do that until we can figure out how to make change a little bit at a time, right? And there's only currently, a system where we've got one party looking for maintaining rule of law and one not. So like that's a problem for now, right, that we got to fix. But like, in a generation, maybe we can get to a multi-party system. We got people fighting over policy, and that's what we can choose between. That's a valid point.
I wanted to say, I'm not going to front. When I was your age, I missed a couple elections. And I'll tell you why. I was doing other stuff. I was busy. You are busy. You're trying to get your lives together. And also, there's a lot about life that you just don't think about. But you're not supposed to be thinking about that. You're supposed to be like trying to get yours now. And a lot of times, like when you've got it, now you can sit back and think like, all right, I care about my community now. I have time to do this. But I know, man, like being that age, like you just don't have time, to think about that. So for me, what I would encourage you to do, and what helped me when I was younger, is social pressure, peer pressure. You're not voting, and to get when you get back on voting or whatever, it used to be like, yeah, right, I get it. And now you can't afford to do that. Now when your friend says, I'm not voting, you can put pressure on them. Like, why not, man? Go ahead and have that conversation, because I know I did not have that conversation. If a friend told me they weren't voting, I'd be like, yeah, I know, I understand. Let's go out. But now I think it's like, if I could go back in time, I would go, if I could tell myself, hey, go ahead and make that plan to vote. Like the times that I didn't vote, I was out of town or I was doing something, I could have got an absentee ballot. All the things that I could have done, could have been more responsible, I just didn't do. So you encourage your friends to do that.
Also, I would say, to your point, that there is a way of thinking of it, for me personally, where I think, okay, if I don't participate, I'm kind of saying to myself, I guess I'd be cool with either. Right? Like, if someone's like, would you like a plate of nails or a tuna fish sandwich? And I don't love tuna, but I don't want to eat a plate of nails, but I just say, choose for me. Therefore I'm saying, I guess I'm cool with eating a plate of nails too. So I think it's easy to feel daunted, but I think it's important to remember that it is your chance to make a choice toward something that you want to see. Like I said, it's that travel analogy. It's that first train ticket. It's that plane ticket to the city that you want to go to so that you can get to that specific point in that city that you want to reach. But that plane's not going to take you directly there. But you have to choose.
Can I share just one quick thought?
Please.
Based on what you're saying is absolutely correct, and totally hear you on what you've shared as well. And to the Chapel Roan point, it's like she's saying things that so many young people believe, and it's refreshing to see that. And I think a lot of young people see that as refreshing to see as well. And we're telling you there's a choice point here that we're needing to make. But just to make it clear to you what my job is, I advise musicians and actors and other high net worth individuals on policy and philanthropy. And I work with so many movements. I work with the leaders of Black Lives Matter. I work with the leaders of the Women's March and so many people on the front lines of climate policy, et cetera. That's my job, behind the scenes. And let me tell you, nobody thinks either one of these candidates is perfect. Make that very clear. Nobody thinks either one of these candidates is perfect. But to Phillipa's point, we'd rather start and advocate with an administration that's moderate than one that's crazy, right? Where you're gonna get nowhere maybe. And I just wanna tell you that when we go and vote in this election, it isn't the final stamp, and it isn't just saying, all right, we're gonna have Donald Trump or Kamala Harris as president, and that's it. There are so many people who are ready, who have a plan for either candidate, whether it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris who is elected, and Kamala Harris is not gonna have it easy. And so I just wanna make it clear to you that there are a lot of people who agree with what I'm hearing young people say, that are really ready to fight back when it's time. Kamala Harris is not perfect on these issues whatsoever, but they know that they're gonna be in a better position to work with that administration to make these gradual wins. And so I just wanna make that clear and share with you that there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes with these movements, and they're gearing up, and they're ready to be advocating and on the streets for the next 4 years, no matter who's president.
I mean, look, it can be as simple as this, right? Like, I'll speak as a private citizen, not advocating for anybody in particular. If the Trump administration gets in, the Supreme Court's gonna get more and more corrupt for the next many generations. If it's the Harris-Walz administration, they may expand the Supreme Court, give term limits to judges, and all of a sudden we've got something that's has a lot more judicial independence, which maybe means women get the right to the bodily autonomy back, which means gay marriage will no longer be the threat to gay marriage going away will not happen, which means all of a sudden the progress that we were making before what's the Citizens United, meaning all this dark money going to the court, that we can work towards a Supreme Court that represents the will of the people, because right now it doesn't. That only happens if it's the Walz-Harris administration. The Trump administration will slam in more judges, and rights will go away further and further, be more and more corrupt. We're dealing with a completely illegitimate group of justices in my mind at this point. So it's not, it's frustrating, but it's not equivalent. It's a little bit, there's a huge difference in terms of steps in the right direction.
Thank you all very much. In a moment, I'm gonna move us on to Q&A, but I'd like to take a moderator's privilege for a moment, since there was a conversation about the power in numbers. And Erin, you were talking about the very low youth participation, youth turnout numbers that you've seen. So I study political behavior, and I do a lot of research on the youth vote. I do want to say, when you hear that young people's turnout numbers, their rates, right, around turnout are very low, I don't want you to walk away feeling like, because all of you are engaged, right, to some degree. You're all different places maybe in terms of how you feel about the election, how you feel about your individual vote, but you're all engaged, you're here. But some of you may walk away, or have thought before you came today, when you hear low turnout numbers for young people, like, what's wrong with my peers, right? Why are they apathetic? Why don't they don't care, right? Or you have trouble, right, reaching out. I just want to emphasize that, yes, turnout is much lower for younger people, age 18 to 24 versus 65 plus, 20, 30, 40 percentage points lower from younger to older. That's consistent across elections, whether we're talking about midterms, presidential, primaries, it's worse in terms of the disparity. But there are real reasons. It's not apathy, right? It may feel like apathy sometimes, and certainly I agree with, like, we think about it that way because we try to address it and get people to care, but there are a lot of systemic barriers, right, that actually produce low participation with young people, and I'm not gonna lecture you on all of that today. Happy to answer anything in the Q&A, but if you feel disconnected from the political process, if you wonder about the lesser of two evils or two evils period, right, it's a political system that really, by and large, excludes young people from it. Historically, right, 18-year-olds didn't get the right to vote until after the Vietnam War, and still today, in the way candidates and campaigns who do the vast majority of outreach and mobilization and asking people to vote, the way they engage or actually don't engage with you in a sincere way, if you're young, you even registered to vote, statistically we have a lot of data on this, you are far less likely to get any contact from a candidate or a campaign, whether you want it or not. But it does work, it matters, that's why they do it. You're far less likely to be asked to vote, to be given the information you need, and even when you're registered and you're on your own. And then when you go out to do the research, right, on your own, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, sometimes you feel like, oh, I can't make sense of this, right? Or I don't know what to believe, right? I can't tell the difference between judges. Everybody has trouble with that, for sure. But the information system also is really designed to disadvantage you. You're not losing your mind if you can't find information that makes sense for you to your ages. And really, it's a form of suppression of the youth vote. And the apathy narrative really is a way to continue that suppression of the youth vote. So what we do is we blame you, right? So you don't get all that support. The system, right, doesn't reach out to you, doesn't support you. In school, you're not really taught the how, what, and why it's important to vote, unless you have a really cool civics, teacher. You turn 18 and we magically expect you to both know how to vote, the nuts and bolts when you've never voted before, and also to want to vote and believe it matters. And then when you don't participate in high rates, what do? We blame you guys and say, what's wrong with this generation? Maybe they shouldn't be voting if they don't care. So I just wanted to put that out there. You can tell me, push back in the Q&A if you disagree with any of that. But I just want you to walk away to not being down on yourselves when you see those low numbers. There's reasons for those low numbers, and for many of you, you are logically making decisions, right, based on that. The idea is to push back, we hope, you push back against those systemic barriers that are really designed to suppress you.
So was
There's a
after
lot
the
of-
it was
there's
after the Vietnam War that the 18-year-olds were allowed to vote? Is that accurate?
Yeah, they got the right to vote because.
So before the Vietnam War, you could fight and die without and not be able to vote. It was only
Big thing then.
Yeah.
That literally was the slogan.
It was only in the late 1970s that you
Big
could even
slogan.
vote.
There's so much money in suppressing the vote because the vote is so powerful. People do not spend a lot of money on things that they don't think are going to be important. So as hard as it is for you to find the information that you need, know that someone has done that deliberately in some ways, somewhere.
Well, we're going to make it easy for you today with a
And
QR
so
code
we are going
right
to make
here.
it easy for you today. But right
Is that
now,
it?
I want
Okay,
it,
Q&A.
guys. I want to open it up because we got these great resources here. We're only going to take about 20 more minutes with them, and I want you guys to ask questions. So yes, hands.
Can
go,
we
go,
put
go.
the
Wait,
QR
hold on.
code up
One
for this
quick
next
thing, if I
session,
may.
though?
We're going to take questions. I just want to make sure all of you know, please kindly gear your questions towards the topic at hand. I know some of you might want to also fan out a little bit, but we want to respect the fact that our panelists are here to talk about our democracy and participation. So kindly keep that in mind, and please.
Is this it? Is this the QR code, you guys?
Oh, there we go.
So there you go. You can get your phones out, and you can, if you're interested in participating, you can zoom in right on that.
this should also this should also get you. This is a project that the Hometown Project is doing with Headcount. Here we go. Woohoo.
Now, and explain it, Erin. So if you go to the QR code, what happens?
Yeah, so this will take you, this is a project that we're doing with the organization Headcount. There's a lot of artists. This will take you to a program that we're doing. It should be Denai Guerrera, who is, I don't know, you might know her from The Walking Dead. She has a spin-off of The Walking Dead
Black
called
Panther.
The Ones Who Live. She's also in Black Panther. And you can win signed Funko Pops, her two characters. If you check your status, you can be registered. You just click on the link and you check your status. Where am I registered? Where it'll take you through a process. You can get texts about it, but it'll also enter you for a chance to win a very cool prize. There's also, Headcount has tons of these projects that they're doing. Sabrina Carpenter tickets, Maggie Rogers, tons of really cool stuff on their website where it's just taking action in a political environment, things that you care about, but also cool experiences because you want to be civically engaged.
Great. All right, and we're going to leave this up afterwards too, right? So you can come up later. First question.
Use your theater voice, darling.
Yes.
Project.
Project.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being. Hello? Okay, we're good. Cool. First of all, thank you so much for all being here. I've been lucky enough to see a lot of your work. I got to see Here We Are in New York, and a lot of your guys' work really, can be understood through this grander scheme and this, this socio-political perspective. And when it comes to like the art of creating character and acting, how do you integrate those socio-political perspectives into your process as an actor?
Well, history is told by our leaders and our warriors and our storytellers. That's it. And when our leaders can be corrupt and our warriors have to report to those corrupt leaders, then the mantle of telling the truth falls only to one group, our storytellers. So don't let anybody tell you that it's not the most important job. Yes, it's fun, but there's no more important job than being a storyteller who will hold a mirror up to what we are and the things we struggle with. It is an incredibly privileged job to have. Does that answer your question at all? Yeah.
Yeah,
Next question.
Well, sometimes it's hard too.
Oh, please. Oh, so sorry.
Sometimes you have to, like, you have to sneak it in. So, yeah.
Please. You can see better than I can.
Hi, thanks
Hi.
for being here. My name's Jazz. Thank you for being a double major representative. I study theater and PR, and one of our courses is called The Role of the Celebrity in PR. So we study how people with backgrounds like yours have an implementation in how society works through social media. I was wondering if you can share an example of how you use your voice to encourage voter engagement through your platforms, whether that's through your art mediums or through social media.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, use my platform just to remind people that we're all in this together, truly. I think maybe you guys have seen some videos of Steve and I singing songs about voting.
We'll do it for you right here tonight if you go and vote.
But
We'll make one up right here and now on the spot.
Wait, let me up the ante. You mean they have to not only vote, but bring a friend or two?
That's right. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the nuts and bolts of it, which is that it can be fun. Yes, it is daunting, and this speaks a little bit to the joy factor of all of it. But, I love my job because I get to engage with people. I get to know people. I get to be different people. I get to put myself in different people's shoes. And part of that is about being vulnerable and opening myself up to the world and sharing a little bit of myself and my story. And even if that means making a video that's super boring of me just like sitting at my table drinking a coffee and being like, guys, I'm going on Ballotpedia. I think it takes a little bit of like the sort of mysticism around being politically active, you know, like what does an activist look like and what do they do? They must be out on the streets all the time.
They must be tied to a tree in Northern California.
But do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually, being politically active can look like sitting at your kitchen table, being super basic in your sweatpants, and just going online and doing a little research. It's kind of almost that boring. So I think, like, I just want people to feel okay with the idea of not knowing everything, not understanding everything, feeling confused. That is completely normal. I am an adult in this world. I still get confused. I'm not surprised that you guys might be confused too, but like, we're all confused together.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can actually find the joy in that, in the joy in being curious and having questions and actually not having answers. So.
And to further put a point on your question about actual social media use, like Phillipa and I together have about a little less than 1 million eyeballs, maybe, that would see a post. In 2016, the Michigan portion of the election was won by 10,000 votes. So Trump won Michigan by 10,000 votes in 2016. If we can get a handful of people off the sidelines with some videos and some songs or whatever, then that's going to help. Every little bit helps. So it has real value in that way. For example, Taylor Swift, 200 million people see what she's up to, right? Like, that has real general value. So in this landscape, it does have a lot of value politically.
Can I share one thing, because your question is really awesome? There's other ways, too, that a lot of these artists are getting involved. I was just in Detroit and New Orleans. We did shows with Lil Tecca and Big Frida. And literally, like, if you say Lil Tecca is going to host a free show in Detroit, 2,000 kids are going to show up to learn about registering to vote and clean energy jobs in Detroit. And so there are other movements, too, about talking about infusing joy and art into policy and civic engagement. We did a show with Coldplay, who did we did multiple shows with Coldplay a few years ago where they talked about prison reform in California, and then they were able to pass some prison reform legislation. So it can happen on social media, it can happen in rallies, people showing up. It can also just be, let's infuse some education into a Coldplay concert or into a Lil Tecca concert. So there's a lot of ways that artists are getting involved in these movements.
Yeah, like I'm purposely not on social media at all. I purged myself a few years ago because I was fighting with too many people. But doing stuff like this, I was also involved in something in Michigan too. We did this thing in Flint where every kid that's born in the city of Flint gets $1,000 for his first 5 years. It's crazy. I don't know if anybody like knew that was possible. But getting involved in these different things, I found out I didn't need social media as much as I thought. Like, I'm here, you know. So, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do. But yeah.
Thank you. Oh, she's in charge now.
Thank you. It's okay, we still love you, Laura. Hi, thank you guys so much for coming. We are so grateful. I was wondering, I believe as artists we have such a capacity and so much practice with empathy and compassion, which is what makes us so able to, gives us the capability to tell these stories and get out and energize these actions like voting and political awareness. But it can be an overwhelming amount of empathy, and when you're burnt out, when you have compassion fatigue, it seems almost impossible to continue that work. So do you guys have any tips for setting boundaries and stuff like that so that you don't burn out?
Yeah, tons and tons of self-care. In the world now where every headline seems really intense, you got to really take care of yourself and lean on your tribe. In this case, maybe your classmates, your friends, your family, or whatever. Really important to take breaks from the news. Do what you got to do to make sure that you...
Therapy is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're the first generation that grew up with every headline in your face every single minute of every single day, and we're seeing how the burden that is put on you. And so I think the best advice we can give you is just make sure you're taking time to take care of yourself and your people, and take a break from the tech.
Yeah, I think conscious disconnection can be very empowering. I feel like you will know for yourself when it's gotten to the point where you're unconsciously disconnecting, right? And that's the line that you will toe for yourself, because you just have to be attuned to your body truly and how exhausted you feel mentally, emotionally. It's a lot to bear, but I think that you guys maybe talk about this a lot, is this idea of filling the well. You know, if you're always drawing from the well, what's going to be left if you're just giving and giving and giving and giving? You have to find out what feeds you and what's important to you.
You know what we do? You know what Pip and I do? We walk. If you want to really like basic, when we're feeling a little overwhelmed, we walk. Is that right?
Yeah, we go
We
on
leave our
long
phones at
walks.
home and we go for a walk. It's the
All right.
best medicine.
I told you, I got off social media. You know, I mean, that seems drastic, but I feel like my life was fine. The thing that got me off of it was how hard it was to get off of it. You know, so I was just like, okay, I'm getting off Twitter, and it took like a week. And it's just like, okay. But that has done a lot for my mental health.
I
You
think
know, and I don't think you have to get off of it permanently
Right.
like a lot of people, you know, but like me.
Yeah, breaks.
But taking breaks has done a lot, especially for my capacity to empathize with people. Because even if you're an empathetic person, like for me, every day I would go on social media, and I know a lot of people. Every day somebody was dying, and it was just like, I don't know if I have enough empathy. I don't think my social circle naturally is this big to where I would know about this much tragedy, you know, personally, and I felt it personally. So I'm like, you know what? I think that I need to disengage a little bit on this.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, similarly, I'm trying to retrain myself of like the screens is exactly what Steve said. You're a generation. We're all, I've become that generation of being tethered to a device where I can always be reached. And so that energy of like news always in my face, everyone can always tell me and then you're doom scrolling, right? It can be really overwhelming. And I think what I do in those moments is exactly, I mean, you've got beautiful places to hike here. You've got like disconnecting, exactly what everyone said, because even though I should be a news junkie, I work in the political space, I have to turn it off too, because also it's like, what can there's an enormous amount of disinformation out there too, and you don't want to let that take over from just finding out what you really do need to know. So I think that's it's difficult for all of us, but I think it's really, screens do not help. They don't.
Here's a concrete one too that really helped our life. When we go to bed, we leave our phone in the other room. And our sleep got better, our conversation got better, our health got better, we slept better. I know it's hard to do, but that's like a tactile thing you could do. When it's time to sleep, just leave it in the next room. Your body will thank you.
Yeah, get an alarm clock that does not have,
Yeah,
that's not connected to a phone.
An old-fashioned alarm clock?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you all. Next question. Where are we?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. My name is Jordan. As a young person, I'm very confused on getting actual information about candidates. I know Kamala engages with us on TikTok a little bit, but it's not actually about her policies. So what is your advice on getting actual information about candidates?
Ballotpedia.
Ballotpedia.
Especially when you're close to election day. I mean, seriously, if you look on Ballotpedia, you'll be blown away at all the information that's on there. Candidate statements, articles.
Does it say what their policy positions are?
What their policy, as much as they have said, will be in there. It'll give you references to
That's great.
things that they've said, policy papers that they put out, all of that stuff, articles, anything that you need to know. And for me, especially for those ballot measures, because that's stuff that I have no idea. There will be candidates in your local election that you won't be able to find information on, like judges and stuff like that. But for things councilmen, up to councilmen, you'll be able to get enough information, I think, that you need.
And I also want to share, there's something about, I mean, we just talked about going off social media, whatever, but I've learned a lot about some of the candidates that Jerry's supporting in Michigan, and sometimes it's really a sense of their character. You don't really have to be buried in their policies, and I'm not saying this is watch videos of them and see what you think of them, but you really can get a sense of what type of leader they would be, right? What type of, you don't have to agree with them on everything, but are they going to listen to other people's opinions, take them into consideration? There are things that you can learn about how they interact with the world that are not just about prescriptive policies. And so I think, and I'm not talking about just the top of ticket, I'm talking about your state, your state rep, your state senator, and just learning and listening and learning their names and maybe they were a former teacher and now they care so much that they want to go sit on their school board and help advocate for their kids or their students or what have you. So sometimes just knowing those little things that the life choices that they make, what led them to become a public servant, is something to me that I really look to say, oh wow, maybe they would be a voice for me in this world of government. So that's another thing I think is important to look at.
I'll add something really quick before the next question. Ballotpedia, absolutely. Local news sources, right? Local journalism, which is getting to be a more and more dire kind of situation in terms of being able to
Survive.
Yeah, survive. But they'll give you the local information, and there's lots of states. So if you're in California and you're going to be voting in California, there's an easy voter guide from the League of Women Voters. Actually, it's national. There are local news outlets, local TV stations.
How do you get the voter guide? How does somebody get the voter guide?
You can.
Comes in the mail.
Well, there's the official voter guide from the state of California. That
Brought mine.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You got yours?
I brought it. I was going to say your little ballot guide that you get. We just got those.
Yeah.
You get
There's
those
the official
before.
ones, but a lot of people do find those like.
That's
you
hard
know,
mail,
especially
though,
the
right?
ballot
What are these
propositions.
18-year-old kids who have never seen a piece of mail in their life?
How do you
Look
make
at?
sense of it, right?
Right? Online.
So you can Google easy voter guide from the League of Women Voters. There's usually local TV stations and newspapers that'll have voter guides at the state and local level. And then also I just wanted to say that for those of you, because everybody takes shortcuts. It's okay to take shortcuts. You want to know the people and the organizations that you care about, how they feel about a proposition. Sometimes that'll give you a lot of guidance when maybe you're trying to make sense. We all are trying to make sense, right, of the legal language. So think about the organizations, climate justice, right? For instance, as we talked about today, see if they put out recommendations. A lot of organizations do. Sometimes they take a side, right? Sometimes they just tell you about the propositions more around how it's going to affect potentially that particular issue that you care about. But it's a good source to go to the organizations that you know and trust and see what they have to say as well. Hopefully a mixture. Okay, next question.
So this is going to be the last question, and I got it up here. Sorry, guys, I know you're up there too, but we have
Okay.
a hard stop, and so here's our
do.
last question.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Megan. I just wanted to know, what were your opinions with having so many Republicans show up at the Democratic National Convention?
There weren't that many. Oh, you mean, oh, sorry. I was there. So were any of you here?
You mean in support or in protest?
Oh,
Yeah, I think it was an indication of the moment that we're in this country, where you've got like the pro-democracy coalition, which is Democrats, Republicans, Independents, left, right, everywhere, and then the Trump coalition, which is corruption, anti-rule of law, lifelong, bullying, assault, rape, the whole thing. Pretty simple.
I think there's a generation of us who don't even know that that there was a time when we really disagreed with one side, but that they weren't insane. So
Yeah, totally.
It's a
It was
little
only
bit
like
different
10 years
now.
ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 15 years ago.
I don't think that, it's because of the moment that we're in now, just like he was saying. I don't think that that's going to happen forever. And
Right.
Yeah, we're going to get through this moment as a country, hopefully, but I think that's a great indication of just people feeling like country over party, rule of law over not.
And I would also like to add to that, because I went for the first time this year, which is very cool. If ever you get the chance to become a delegate or become more involved in that way, it's a very cool experience to do. I was very surprised as well as to how many Republicans were there. A lot of veterans. My own congressperson, Pat Ryan, is a veteran and has organized a lot of veterans around on the East Coast, because it's very true. They're really recognizing certain sort of benefits and things that they really need as a community. And some, one party is doing it and the other is not. But also that I didn't really see many protesters there, just so you know. It was all over the news. I'd turn the news on, they'd be like, so many protesters. I literally maybe saw 8. It was so strange. Yeah.
Anyone else? This is our last question. Okay. Well, I'm going to close this out. Thank you, all of you.
Who's going to participate in this election?
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Just
All
do
right,
it.
you guys, get your
Before we
friends
go-
involved.
Just do it.
Before we go, I just want to ask. We have 2 things. One is that how many of you feel a little bit more inspired to maybe call 5 people in your hometown and check in and see if they're voting.
They don't make phone calls.
Maybe?
Text.
Here's what I'll say.
DM.
a phone
You're
call.
Just
aging
remember-
ourselves.
Whatever
Can I
it is,
text
you know what
them?
I'm saying.
Can I say one thing about that? It's really hard to engage with people who you think that they might not agree with you. But just remember that just because you are open and willing to listen to somebody who might not want to vote, that you have to maybe convince to vote, that doesn't negate your stance on things and your feelings, right? It's just a one step that you can take to maybe, even if you can't convince somebody to do something, put it in their brain, put it in their thought process of, well, should I be doing that? Because they might not even be thinking about it. It might not be a concern to them at all. They might not even be thinking, oh, do I want to or do I not to? Somebody convince me. They might not even be thinking about it. So it might be even worth just engaging in the conversation, if not to convince them of something that you believe firmly, that maybe it just gets their thought process out of the sort of day-to-day stuff that takes them away from thinking about voting. And that's one step towards that. It's just a ripple effect.
And remember the data, right? There's a group of people that we're not going to change their opinion, and they're going to participate in this process, right? And then there's another group of people the same. And then there's, what did we say, 150 million other people that are just feeling a little bit left out or apathetic. We just need to get a tiny bit of those people to participate, and then we can make progress on all those issues that we raised our hands about before.
So my last point is that if you're feeling like, okay, I've already registered and what else can I do? Me and Zach Steele, fabulous Zach Steele, is waving to everyone in the back of the room. Thank you, Zach Steele. Have a table set up outside with a bunch of postcards to send to people to get them to vote. Not vote for any particular candidate, but to vote. And to vote in places where their vote will really, really matter. So if only 2 or 3 of you want to stay and hang out with me and Zach, who are super cool, and write postcards, we'll be there writing postcards right after we finish up here, okay? Right out front. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, Zach will tell jokes because he's funny.
Guys, most importantly, how was She Loves Me? Was it so good? Really good show, right? We're going to come and see your next thing if we're in town, for sure.
I just want to give Jerry and Kevin an opportunity if you want to.
Thank
no
you.
pressure. If there's anything to in
Oh,
conclusion.
thank you so much for
well.
coming here. I just wanted to say, like, it's so good to see your faces here and like everybody. Like, this is it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. We've talked a lot about voting, but I'm just so happy you all are storytellers. There's so many opportunities in the world and also here at the School of Theater for you to use storytelling for good and social change. So use it, you know. You guys are very special people. We're all very lucky to be storytellers.
Fantastic. All right. So thank you all again very much for being here. Do go out, do spread the word, do spread your, hopefully, enthusiasm, thoughts, dialogue. It doesn't have to be at the national level, like I've already been said today, right? Sometimes the easiest or easier way to engage people is not about Trump versus Kamala, but it's about maybe a state proposition or another issue, right, that you care about. And I want to thank our panelists, Phillipa,
Thank you.
Steve,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Jerry, Kevin, and Erin. Thank you all so much for your dedication, your time, your commitment, and spending a Saturday with our students here at USC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And Laura.
Go Trojans. I'm actually a Notre Dame fan. I didn't really say that. I'm surprised I didn't burst into flames when I stepped on this stage at USC.